There we go, family. What's good, family? Welcome to the broadcast. It's your man, Mark Black. Family, I want to, first of all, before we even get started, I want to wish you all a happy winter solstice, right? The winter solstice, like any other universal event that happens here on Earth, is celebrated by so many people everywhere. People from every culture, every language, every religion, all has their way or method or mean to honor, to celebrate today, right? Today, family, represents what will be the longest night of the year, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about the long night. Okay, so shout out to everybody. Happy solstice to all of you. Before we get started, though, make sure that if you have not done so already, hit the thumbs, whether it's the like button or the hater button, right? Let YouTube know this is content you're interested in seeing if you are. Also, check the description field of the video. There's links to resources, books, reports, you name it, to help you understand not just, why we fight, but what we're fighting for. All right. And I want to give an extra special shout out on today to my patrons. I have now 12 patrons via Patreon. I'm not going to name you all because, some of y'all have used your government names, but you know who you are, and I respect you immensely. Thank you so much. I want to thank you personally for your support, for your belief in my work and what it is that I'm trying to accomplish here. Words fail me. So with that said, let me go through the chat and do my usual, fam. If you're here, you at the house, knock on the door. You don't have to participate in the chat, but let us know you're here so we can shout you out and show you love for you taking the time to listen and talk with us today. So I want to give a shout out to Miss Denny, of course, as always. My brother Double Cease is in the house. Sister Adrian's in the house. Sister Tiffany's in the house. Pretty Muslima is in the house. Salam to you, sister. Namaste to my brother John Anderson. Afro Troop, assemble. I see you, fam. Welcome to the broadcast. Sister Toolbox is in the house. Brother Morpheus, greetings to you, man. Welcome back, fam. Glad to have you. Brother Morpheus is in the house. Miss Virgo is in the house. Let's see here. Jesus Price in the house. I like that name, by the way. DVM, I see you, fam. Welcome to the broadcast. The Cool Man is in the house. And Sister Kimberly is in the house. Happy holidays to you as well, sister. So, family, let's have us a conversation today. Since we don't have to worry about somebody else broadcasting and interrupting what we do, we can actually go in depth and talk about some things today. First, I have to say, though, thank you to Sister Tam, also known as Pretty Muslima, for giving me the inspiration for this topic. I was actually going to discuss this topic in the Wednesday broadcast, but because I kind of already had a topic in play and I wanted to give this one the weight it deserves, I wanted to address this one today for Sucka-Free Saturday. But her and I were talking, and we were talking about the fact that for all of the different discussions that go on as far as political strategy, economic strategy, social strategies, and all this and that, we never really talk about the internal work needed in order to get us to a place to be able to do the needful, right? I mean, no, we weren't talking about religion, fam. So it wasn't that. It was more along the lines of what has to be done in your mind in order to set you up for success in this advocacy for yourself, your family, your people, right, your tribe, and so on and so forth. By the way, shout out to Miss Joyce Colvin is in the house. Welcome to the broadcast. So today, fam, I think it is absolutely appropriate, especially now that we're highlighting this special moment in the wheel of the year, right? This is the day that we look at the longest night the longest night of the year, right? This is when night seems to go on forever and ever and ever, right? In ancient times, fam, for the people who were facing the long night, irrespective of where they are, all of them had the same thing pretty much on their mind. Shout out to Brother Rob, by the way. Welcome to the broadcast and peace to you. All of them were in a state of reflection, because the long night reminds us, fam, that the sun rises, but it also sets, right? That the plants grow, but eventually the harvest comes. The long night, fam, was a time of introspection, of review, of saying goodbye to the old, because everything that is born dies. Everything that begins ends. And the long night, that longest night of the year, was a time of reflection upon the cyclical, spiral-like nature of our lives. So many holidays are centered around this time of year, right? You look at Christmas, which we all know was actually an adoption of the Roman Catholic Church, celebrating the rebirth of the sun, right? The festival of Sol Natalis. There was Saturnalia and all these other different, events and rituals and remembrances, these holy days. And these holy days were all to remind us of the long night, right? The rebirth of the sun only has validity to us when we know what it's like to not have it. The long night is a reminder that everything that we have will ultimately come to an end, good or bad. The long night is the reminder that you should do everything you're able to do when the sun is up, when the days are long, because when the days become short, there's very little, if anything, that you can actually do. How does the long night, though, relate to the inner work that we, as native Black people, as the Black descendants of United States slavery, as ADOS, or whatever it is that you align yourself with, what does this have to do with the internal work that we need to do? Well, it has a whole heap of application to that internal framework that we need in order to be successful in pursuing our justice claim, among other things, right? The night of the long night, the longest night, reminds us, like Sister Toolbox said, that no condition is permanent. We are born, we live, and we die. The plant is planted and the seed blossoms and it grows, but then is reaped. And then the remainder left in the ground to rot. No situation we face, no matter how brutal, no matter how painful, no situation we face is permanent. The long night internally reminds us to be mindful of a time for action. In the longest night of the year, especially here in the northern hemisphere, usually it's very cold. People can't go out and do the things that they want to do. They have to huddle around the heat, around the fire, around each other, and wait for the sun to return to us. The long night reminds us of the need to be active when the time to be active is there. When the sun is up, when the days are long, we need to be acting. We need to be doing. Another thing that we can learn from days like this is that just like the long night is here today, it was here a year ago, yesterday, and decades ago before that. Our life moves in a spiral, in a cycle. If you were to look at our life on a spectrum of space-time, right? On a number line, if you will, right? Our lives spiral around. You see? Time continues, and so we stay on the same time arrow, moving forward in time. But we have peaks, we have valleys, we have triumphs, and we have ills. We have gains, we have losses, we have births, we have deaths. But all of it, fam, is of a piece. All of it constitutes what is our life. By the way, shalom to my sister August, and peace to you, brother Rob, as well. I would like for us to have a discussion today about 3 key things that I've been able to kind of distill, if you will. And I'm not taking credit for it. There's nothing new under the sun. But this is my 3 things that I think will allow us to be able to do the proper inner work to support our efforts towards whatever goal we as individuals, as families, as communities, and ultimately as a tribe will aim ourselves toward. Y'all are saying some really positive stuff in the chat, man. Adrian said nights are quieter so you can hear clearer versus this going on and that. You're right. Like, if you look, Adrian, why is it that all the prophets, all of the wise ones would go off somewhere to gain wisdom, to hear, if you will, the words of God, right? You look at Yeshua. Yeshua was baptized, and the very first thing after John the Baptist baptized him, he broke camp and headed to the wilderness. You look at the Prophet Muhammad, right? He went into the caves. You feel me? It's like something draws us to the quiet places, the places of darkness, of silence, so that when we return to the light, we come back bringing a wisdom that we lacked prior to going there. These 3 things that I'm going to mention, I believe that they're very basic things. But because they're basic, fam, I believe that they are some of the hardest things that we have to do in this life, internally speaking. Shout out to my man Ku Unk, by the way. Shout out to Stakes is High, by the way, too, as well. Welcome to the broadcast. The very first thing that I want to mention that is a part of that internal work is to find what the Bible refers to as the peace that surpasses all understanding, right? To find the middle way that the Buddhists talk about. You feel me? Right? I think that first and foremost, days like today are times for us to reflect upon the things that are important. And one of the most basic and important things is that we have to discover a source of energy, of internal energy, right? Whether you call that internal energy joy or the Holy Spirit, right? Or whatever you call it. But we need to discover a source of internal energy that is not dependent upon circumstances, situations, people, property. Let me explain to you a bit of what I'm talking about from an example in my own life, right? When I was a younger boy, I was very depressive, right? I experienced a lot of abuse, and it made me look at the world in a very despairing way. Very, I won't even say cynical, but just despairing. Like the world can never be trusted to ever mean anything good for me. And so I was quite often, as a child and as a young man, depressed, suffered from depression for quite a few years. And I remember my mother, my beloved mother, shout out to you, little fat. My beloved mother would always tell me, she said, son, she said, don't let nobody steal your joy, because they didn't give it to you. And I used to think, fam, that my mother was fucking cracked. You know, I was just like, why do you be talking to me in these platitudes? Like I care about these little cliche bullshit platitude statements, which don't reflect the reality of my existence at all. Why do you keep telling me these bullshit things? And I used to be outraged when she say stuff like that. One day in the summer of 1999, I found myself homeless. And I decided that since I don't have a home, that wherever I lay my head is where I'm at. So I took off. I went as far east as PA, right, Pennsylvania, and went as far west as New Mexico. I traveled the length of this country damn nearly with no more than $20 in my pocket, the clothes I had on my back, and a few items of clothing in a little pouch that I carried with me. That was it. It was all I had. Ran across a lot of good folk. Ran across some not so good folk. And one day, late August 1999, I'm standing outside this building and I look up into the sky, and the sky was the most brightest blue, fam, that I had ever seen. I'm talking about this, I don't even know how to describe the color blue that the sky was, with these really wispy white clouds in it. It was about 92 degrees outside, but in the desert. So you would think I'd be hot, but it felt like the sun was warming my bones from the inside out. Just this comfort. And I just remember standing there and thinking to myself, it truly does not get any better than this. I'm not kidding you, fam. I was not deluding myself, right? I was familiar with my circumstance and with my situation. I knew where I was. I knew what it was. But that was the first time in my life, fam, that it didn't matter. That there was a joy that was in me simply because I was there. Now, I'm a very logical, reasonable man. So by reason, if you looked at the reasoning of my life, right, if you looked at the logic of my life, I had no reason at that moment to experience any more joy than any other moment. But my mother reminded me a piece that surpasses all understanding. You don't know why it's there, but it's there, and it cannot be extinguished by what you have on, by what you don't have on, by whether or not you have a meal waiting on you or don't have a meal waiting on you, whether or not you have family who loves you or you're alone. It doesn't depend on any of those things. I finally got it. I finally got what she meant. Fam, we need to take times like this to learn to cultivate a joy, a happy, a peace, if you will, that is not contingent upon people, circumstances, situations. And I'm not talking about an irrational or paradoxical exuberance. I simply mean that an awareness of no matter where you are, that's as good as it gets. Some people have described it as contentment. Some people say that it is acceptance. I think they're all right. But one thing that I know that all of these things have in common is that they are the internal reflection of the introspection and the work you've done inside. It's the gift of hard work, of long nights of fear, of struggle, of suffering, of questioning, of doubt. The very first thing that I think that we need to cultivate, fam, is that idea of a joy, of an internal source of energy that cannot be stolen away from you. It cannot be taken away from you. It is yours, and it's yours alone. And it is the light that Yeshua referred to, that you don't hide under a bushel basket. You let it shine. And you have it to let it shine. You feel me? Once you have this inner joy, you cannot help but to let it shine. You could no more cover it than you could stop it. My mother said, don't let them steal your joy, because they didn't give it to you. She's right. Nobody gave it to me. It was self-generated. It was born from within. It doesn't belong to anybody but me. And so I'm able to give it freely to everybody because I can't run out of it. I can't lose it. By the way, shout out to Sister Alexis. Welcome to the broadcast, fam. The second thing that I want us to talk about today, fam, is I want us to explore the idea of rebirth, renewal, and the need for us to let the old things go, to let the old things pass away. You know, my grandmother, I don't talk about her much. There's a reason why. She was not a good person when she was in this life. She was very cruel, very heartless, self-absorbed, a very unkind individual. But the thing that keeps me even thinking about her is the fact that she's gone. She passed away. Whatever mistakes, whatever intimate little cruelties that she was able to foment on the people of our family, the people that she had around her, I actually have been given the gift to be able to see what she was and ensure that I correct those mistakes. In a sense, I am my grandmother's salvation. I could resurrect the dead reputation, the dead legacy that she left us by simply observing where she went wrong and acting accordingly. And so for that and that alone, I will honor her. You get me, fam? Are you getting where I'm coming from on this? There are situations, people, circumstances that are a part of your life that no matter how you look at it, is difficult to derive any type of good feeling or good understanding from those circumstances and situations. Look at where we are in this country, politically, economically. When you look at the data, the information about our circumstances, it's enough to drive any thinking, rational person into a complete state of apathy. If not, just make us turn off the switch, right? We just lose it. Why do you think we have so many that walk down the path of drug addiction? Why do you think we have so many that try to focus on bombarding their senses with every sensation they possibly can, whether it's sex, food, gambling, so on and so forth, in a sense to just try to feel a life that they don't even believe is there? Why do you think that even with the presence of all the evidence that suggests that we're not doing well as a people, everybody wants the high side, they want to shine, right? They want to be bright like diamonds. The reason why is, fam, is simple. Because we always have raged against the dying of the light. Always. This dark night, this long night that we will face tonight is a reminder that even life itself is a fight to rage against the diminishing of the light. That even no matter who brings what to the table as far as jealousy, savagery, brutality, disrespect, hatred, that if nothing else, we're here to be what they weren't, right? We can break all of these chains. We can make sure that all the old things go away, right? The old world has passed away, and behold, all things are become new. They're made new, renewed, refreshed, rebooted, restarted. I don't have to walk the same path that my grandmother walked. So if I can honor her for nothing else, I can honor her for the fact that she showed me where not to go, what path not to take. People tell me I should hate this country. I should hate America for what America has done to me and my people, continues to do to me and my people. But if I can honor America for nothing else, I can honor America for showing me the path not to take. The path to power, love, peace, and prosperity for my people that have nothing to do with genocide and mass murder and lies with theft. I don't have to walk that same path. Let the old things have their moment, their day in the sun. And when they go, let them go. There will be a time, fam, when you will click on one of my broadcasts saying, oh, Brother Black is going to be talking today. That's right. Today's hump day. It's Sucka-Free Saturday. And I won't. My time here will be done. Right? My family will be mourning me. Many of you, hopefully, will be mourning me as well. But when that day comes, the key to the inner work that you need to do then is to let Mark Black go. Take from him what you were able to take from him. Good, bad, or ugly, right? Eat the meat. Leave my bones to be buried and keep on pushing. There is nothing wrong with renewal, with rebirth, with a new opportunity to do today what you were unable to do yesterday. This doesn't mean to hate the past. This doesn't mean to disrespect the ones that came before us. But this also means that we don't fetishize the old and deify the status quo. Life calls us to change. The long night is evidence of change. In the summer solstice, we had the longest day, the brightest light. And now we're here at the moment of the longest night. Life itself is change. We are called to embrace reality. And the reality of our existence is that change is inevitable. The only thing that stays the same is change. The last thing, fam, that I want to mention to you before I open up the lines and let you talk, and I appreciate you guys with your patience and allowing me to speak on this matter, is I want to talk about the fact that one of the greatest internal works that we can do is to understand that there is no power that's in me that is not in you. Fam, we often struggle because we engage the world in a lot of ways as if it is incapable of living up to what we dream it can live up to. I don't think that our people as of yet understand the real power of high expectations. Not impossible expectations, but high expectations. There was a teacher who did an informal study where she took her worst students and separated them into two groups. One was told that they were bad students, couldn't do well, they were just troubled children, right? Because they were acting the fuck out, acting stupid. And the other group was told that that wasn't what they were, that that was just a role they were portraying, and that they could do better, and that they will do better. The teacher saw a 60% increase in grades on tests and assignments simply by just telling the students something different. just by telling them a different story, a different narrative. We underestimate the power of narrative to our peril. Tam, I don't remember who the teacher was. I'll have to look it up again. It was a long time ago and I read about it. Recently, fam, we've seen in the primary season here with the Democrats, we've seen them tell a whole host of different stories about different things, right? There's a narrative thread that talks about the injustices visited upon the American citizens via large corporations. And there's a narrative thread that talks about injustice done to people who just want to experience the American dream, who came here with no documents, nothing more than a hope in their hearts, and so on and so forth, right? There are these stories that are being told right now. And many of us are frustrated because we're expecting to hear a story for us. And that story is not being told. It gets worse for us, as a matter of fact, because the story that should be our story is a story that's given to some other group of people. The story of us, the people who are the descendants of those whose blood, sweat, and tears built this country. That narrative has been handed now to other people. It's immigrants. We still haven't figured out yet the power of a good story, of telling a narrative. Don't get me wrong, fam. As a critical thinker, as somebody whose normal inclination tends towards logic, reason, facts, and evidence, even I know that you can't really truly plumb the depths of the power of a damn good story. You can't. It's literally immeasurable, the power that could be brought to bear with simply the telling of a damn good story. I was watching this show recently. Some of you may have heard about it. What up, Mike? Welcome to the broadcast, fam. Pop a one in the chat if you've seen American Gods, or even better, has read Neil Gaiman's book, American Gods. What I find interesting about that show, besides the fact that there are gods that are just running around all over the place in America, that's hella interesting in and of itself. But what I find the most interesting is that one of the most powerful gods in the show is the one who tells the stories. There's actually two. One's a little bit more, how would you say, circumspect, right? He's writing a story. Peace, black man. Have a good time at the party and be safe, fam. But the other one has no problem dropping a story at the drop of a hat. The one who is writing the story is taught. You know, the Egyptian bird-headed god, right? And the second one is Anansi, or Mr. Nancy, as he's known of in the show. Never let it be said, fam, that if we have gods on our side, that our gods, meaning us specifically, our gods understand the power of a damn good story. For too long, fam, we have allowed everybody to tell our story. We sure have. We whisper our stories to our children in our homes, off in the cut. We break out the scrapbooks and talk about great aunts and great uncles and so on and so forth. And that's important. Don't get me wrong. What it do, old boy Peach? Welcome to the broadcast, fam. But I need you to understand, fam, that we need to be telling our stories loudly, boldly. That's right. Anansi is the father of stories. And he won the right to those stories from Tiger. Tiger used to tell stories of conquest, of blood, of predation. But Anansi, being this little spider, knew he couldn't compete with Tiger with claw and tooth. So Anansi used his brain. Anansi will spin the web of yarns of stories and thus completely influence the reality. True or not, doesn't matter. Whoever said that truth or falsehood should ever interfere with a damn good story? I can tell you for a certainty, our common oppressors, our historical and current oppressors, never let facts get in the way of telling a good damn narrative. They never let a fact like 246 years of free labor get into a way of telling the narrative of us being lazy, shiftless, no good ass niggas. Matter of fact, when it comes to keeping us as the bottom caste, fam, there's nobody who gives a damn about the facts. Why would the hell would they let truth mess up a damn good story? Fam, during the long night, one of the things that we used to do with each other is we used to stand there with each other around the fire and we would tell stories. And in these stories were stories of gods and demons, of creatures big and small, ancient and newborn. There were wisdoms that we passed from one generation to the next during the long night of every year. We need to remember the power of a damn good story. We need to remember what it was like to be inspired, not by knowing all the facts. That's important. I'll be the first one to tell you it's important to know all the facts. But inspiration don't come from facts. Matter of fact, I would go as far as to say that facts are damn nearly anti-inspiration. How many of you have taken a look at the wealth gap data and felt inspired? Not me. I wasn't inspired until I used that information to tell myself a story. That's right. To tell myself a story of a man who is the living evidence of the greatest crime ever committed against the people in modern history. The theft of their labor, the wealth, the resources. And that I, through the power, the blessing, the birthright given to me as a child of those ancestors, now stand and fight in their cause, stand in their shoes, demanding the justice that was due them then and the justice that's due them now. I didn't give a fuck about the data until I told myself a story. Whatever will happen in our political advocacy moving forward in 2020 and beyond, whatever will happen in our social economic story as the people of our unique and distinct heritage and lineage, whatever will happen, I can promise you that it will not be led by the facts. As important as those facts are, your inner life is bigger than the facts. Because your inner mind, your inner life encompasses imagination. And family, in imagination, literally anything you can conceive is possible. Shout out to Sister Sherry, by the way. Welcome to the broadcast. You not late, you right on time. That's right. Look at Uncle Remus. Uncle Remus is just an avatar of Anansi, right? Brer Rabbit. Those Brer Rabbit stories. You feel me? All of those stories, all of those narratives were designed, fam, to get us to take information and use it for something meaningful. It was to give meaning to the data. It's not enough, fam, for me to just present you with information. As best I'm able, I need to give you meaning. I need to give you purpose along with that information. In other words, fam, I need to tell you a story. I need for you to understand the narrative. I'm going to open up the lines here shortly. I want to hear y'all talk. But the long night for me, brothers and sisters, my fellow tribes people, the long night for me is a reminder of so many good things in this life, right? The longest night of the year. You would think, what's good about that? And then I remember the names of gods and the titles of gods, like Osiris. One of his titles was Lord of the Triple Darkness, the Triple Black. There was a beauty, a power, a strength in the time of the darkness. They try to tell us that blackness, that darkness is scary, it's tyrannical, it's oppressive. Right? You know, abandon hope, all ye who enter into the darkness. No, fam. Some of your greatest and brightest teachers and prophets and leaders told you to go into the darkness to find your way into the light. Yeshua said, when you pray, don't pray broadcasting it out in the open as the hypocrites do. Go into your secret place. Go into the darkness. Right? The long night, fam, is where the magic happens. It is a blank slate that allows you to be able to imagine a life that can only exist in here. Imagine it out here as a tableau. How else are you thinking, fam, that we're ever going to have anything that we claim we want if we don't first see it in here? And I can guarantee you, you can't see anything when your eyes is filled with blinding light. No. No. Just like when you go to the movies and they show the most beautiful things up on the screen, before they can do that, they have to put everything in absolute darkness. And just like that, you, on this night and all the long nights to come, fam, will have to reflect on the reality of your existence in the darkness. Because in the darkness is the seed of light. Look at the yin yang, right? You know, the symbol, the circular symbol that's got the little S in the middle and the two dots, right? The yin yang. The yin yang tells us that within light is the seed of darkness. And within darkness is the seed of light. And since it's in a circle, it's a closed system. It will always be that way. None of that's ever going to change. So embrace that. Find a power, whether it's joy, the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, whether it's Papa Legba or Burn Samadhi, or whether it's Yemaya, or whatever it is, but find an internal source of power that cannot be extinguished, that is not dependent upon people, resources, circumstances, situations. Reflect upon the need to embrace loss. That everything that you aspire to will end. That everything that you're going after will one day rot. That's the facts. You don't argue with the facts. You too will die. And the only meaning that your life has is the meaning you give it. The only purpose that your life has is the purpose you give it. And lastly, fam, never, ever, ever allow anybody to control the narrative. Never underestimate the power, as Mr. Nancy said on American Gods, of a goddamn good story. Marshal all the data you want. Marshal all the facts you want. And then sit back and tell me a story, fam. Tell me a story about what that data actually means to me and mine. Tell me a story about how this information needs to move me. Because guess what, fam? The data is true, but that story combined with the data is true too. It's what allows us to be able to speak to those who could slay us with a memo without fear. It's what allows us to stand up and rise for justice, for peace, for love, for righteousness. It's what allows us to pick up our crosses and follow the ones that came before us. (425-296-1980) is the number, fam. Tell me, your brother who loves you, what lessons do you think we should learn from the night, the long night? Longest night of the year, fam, is a time for remembrance, a time for reflection. You tell me your story. Tell me what lessons you've learned in the long nights previous, the long nights long ago. Exactly. Alexis said, get your spiritual game up. Look, I am not religious. I'm an atheist. But even I understand that there is a need for us to, for lack of a better way to say it, gird ourselves in the whole armor of our respective gods. Caller from 619, it's your man Mark Black. What's your name, where you calling from, and what's on your mind?
How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well.
Dr. Miles Bennett Dyson, and calling from the Midwest.
Thank you, Brother Miles. It's a pleasure to have you on the broadcast with us tonight, fam. And happy winter solstice to you. What's on your mind, fam? The floor is yours.
Well, I just figured I'd call in and let you know this is an excellent broadcast you have going on. And I think it's important at the end of the year to reflect on the things that you accomplished throughout the year.
Yes.
A lot of times it can be very easy to just want to forget what happened behind us and rush into the future hoping that it'll be better. But if you never reflect on what went good for you and bad for you, then you're bound to make those mistakes again.
Absolutely, fam. A lot of us mistake the map for the territory. You know, a map is not the land itself. You feel me? On the land itself, when you go out there, there are storms, there are boulders in the way, there are animals, and so on and so forth. You feel me? The map is not the territory. Too many of us get caught up in thinking because we got a map that we're going to progress, but you still have to go out there and walk. You feel me, Brother Miles? I mean, did you ever watch The Matrix, Dr. Miles?
Oh, of course I've seen The Matrix.
Right.
Very good movie.
So
the first one was good.
Right. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the first one. The other two
yeah.
is like, but the first one was bomb. Do you remember when Morpheus told Neo, he said that there is a difference between knowing the path and walking the path? You remember that?
I faintly remember. I haven't seen the movie in about 7-8 years.
No, it's fair enough. But what he was saying to him, fam, is that there's a difference between us having the facts and the information and this, that, and the third, and then actually using those facts and information in a way that brings meaning to our lives, right?
Okay.
You know,
right.
At the end of the day, when we have these times like the long night, like tonight, right? These moments of introspection, of regathering and renewal are supposed to remind us of the idea that our lives only have the meaning we give them, right? If we interpret things badly, then why be surprised when we have a bad life?
Right.
You know.
So I got a question for you, Mark.
Please ask
real
away.
Quick. Okay, so what you've seen this year from what has happened politically with ADOS, the good, the bad, the ugly of all the stuff that has happened, do you see yourself continuing on the same path into the new year?
Good question. The short answer is yes. Now I'll give you a slightly longer answer, right?
Go for it.
The fact is that the path to justice, to righteousness, has always been a narrow one, right? Meaning that at the end of the day, it is not necessarily our job to convince everybody to jump on this path, right? And even those of us on this path, because of the whisperings of accusations that we don't deserve to be on this path, or people telling us that we don't understand things and that we don't know enough and all this other stuff, right? All the different, for lack of a better way to say it, demonic, right? Or accusatory, satanic things out there are out there to help us deviate from the path, right? But this path has always been narrow, and it has always been one that only those who have seen some key truths will ever walk anyway, right? Like, there's a reason why this platform is called the Black Outcast Media, right? Because if you think about it, fam, This is the home of those of us who never bought into what everybody else was talking about. We were the only ones who sat there and said, okay, millions of people believe X, Y, and Z. That doesn't make millions of people right. That just means that millions of people could be fucking idiots, right? Like,
True.
you, if you are this black sheep, if you will, right? This outcast, it liberates you to be able to explore the places, to walk the path that nobody else is ever willing to walk anyway. So I was going to walk this path no matter what occurred this year, as far as ADOS or anything else goes, right? Now, there's been a lot of beautiful, amazing, good things that have happened. There's some things that are not so good, and that's life, right? That is kind of the cyclical nature of everything that we engage in, right?
Correct.
But as far as the path that I had planned to walk, I cannot walk any other way. I at this particular point, fam, I don't know how to go any other way but the way I go, right? But the path that I'm on. Even if it means my death, I don't care, right? You can only die. Like, what's the big deal? You feel me? So
You got to go at some point in time. So
yeah, exactly. Like death comes. The long night teaches
right.
us that the plants that were once green and fruitful and prosperous are now stumped off, cut off stumps, rotting in the
Right.
ground. The long night teaches us that the sun that gave warmth and energy and beauty to everything is at its weakest. Right? It's diminished greatly. And so on and so forth. I mean, these are lessons that we are reminded annual cycle, annual cycle to annual cycle until we finally figure it out. And these truths, fam, are universal, which is why you can say these things to any people, regardless of language, religion, culture, and so on and so forth. And it makes sense because the most simple, basic truths are universal. They cut across all the bullshit, all the dross, you know?
One of the things that I've come to see from just living life is, and it was said to me by someone I was having a discussion with, and they said it's easier for people to deal with the devil that they know than to learn a new devil. And what they're trying to help me understand was, even though I was talking about like how can we change the situation, how can we make it better, the person was saying it's good ideals and concepts, but human beings tend to like to go with what they become comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the reason why, it could be for any, variety of reasons. Maybe they're getting personal gain from it or psychological gain. But that's one of the biggest things that I've learned is the challenge in trying to put new ideals and concepts in front of people
Mm-hmm.
is that people tend to like the things that they're currently comfortable with because they know what to expect from it than something that they don't know. Now, somebody did teach me this. I was having a conversation with this guy. He was a really high-ranking executive at a company,
Mm-hmm.
and he had to sit down with me. And we're drinking coffee and just talking. And he told me how his company really got into the credit market in the early 1900s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it came out of the Great Depression. And so he's telling me the story behind it, and that his company decided instead of trying to sell these tools to people, they'd give it to them on credit, and they'd send their sales reps around to them each week to collect a little bit of money, right?
Right.
And he said the reason why they did that is because they knew that people couldn't afford to buy the tools outright because they were coming out of a Great Depression. But where he was getting at is that he taught me this lesson I've come to see is true. And he said, you can't really make big changes when things are going fine. In chaos, there's opportunity. And his company was able to flourish because when the chaos came around, other companies didn't want to adjust to the fact that you can't sit there and try to sell farm tools or equipment like you used to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that hopefully as ADOS or foundational Black Americans or however you want to put it,
Mm-hmm.
the lineage of those come out of slavery in this country will understand that it's not about if you can find perfect times. When you're able to capitalize on chaos, that's when you can make the greatest changes. Why? Because that devil that people are used to has now been shaken up, and they're looking for security in something. That's all that people really want. And it was just like things like that that I come to like kind of learned from talking to people who have really greater success than me, that when I
Mm-hmm.
really step back and think about it in my own personal life, I deal with that too. That's why at times we keep the habits we keep because we're looking for comfort in them, as opposed to we might want that change, but until something comes and shakes you up, you're not really going to make those leaps to change to what you want it to be.
You know what? I'm continually and again, I see these religious teachings and stuff like that, these narratives, as a mental technology of a sort, right? Because again, I have no belief in any gods or creatures or anything like that. But that doesn't mean that these things cannot have a validity for us, right? Or for me. And one of the narratives that I'm consistently drawn to is the narrative that was given to us through the New Testament, right? Via Yeshua. When Yeshua said, pick up your cross and follow me, right? And a lot of
Correct.
people don't understand that that's actually a religious truth that is in every spiritual tradition, right? The Quran says the same thing. Allah says in the Quran, He says, you disdain struggle because you do not know what is good for you, right?
Mm. Yeah.
We failed to understand generation after generation after generation one key fact of the universe. And that is that without the introduction of activity, of energy, due to entropy increasing over time, the universe will always seek to head toward a state of maximal disorder, right? Picking up
Right.
your cross, fam, is doing the work, is being, is picking up your labor. It is doing the work, right? Old school Christians like our grandmothers and grandfathers and stuff like that used to tell us that picking up the cross was picking up the work of Jesus, right? That
Right.
salvation isn't just Jesus's thing. Salvation is our thing, right? The Bible even says, work out with fear and trembling your own salvation, right? If there is going to be any salvation that we see as a people, Dr. Miles, I'm certain you could agree with me when I say that it will come at the culmination of laborious effort, of a lack of comfort, right? Of a lack of security. Like, in other words, the more effort we put into it, the more likely we are going to manifest or make whole that which we're aiming for. Would you agree?
I agree, and I'd add on to that. In my personal view, how I'm viewing this situation is, I don't have an expectation to see all the fruits, or really any fruits, from the labor that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not me looking at it pessimistically. I'm just looking at the fact that if you look at the greatest generation, like they were the ones who really started a lot of the civil rights stuff
Oh,
that
yeah.
benefited their children, the boomers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying there weren't people out the greatest generation who might have been able to get some type of benefit out of it, but when you look at timing, the work that we're doing today, a lot of us are millennials or Gen Xers. That means you're roughly maybe late 20s. For me, I'm an early millennial, so I'm mid 30s,
Yeah.
right? The push that we're gonna make, we probably won't get all the benefit out of it. So if you're doing it because you think you're about to make your come up, I wouldn't take that view. I don't take that view, because if I did, then as the challenges start to get tougher and tougher and tougher, as is going to happen, because they're really going to want to test your metal to see, do you really want this, or are you guys just over here kicking up a ruckus because we're not paying attention to you?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
So I believe I'm taking the view that I don't think I'm going to see the results of all this, but nonetheless, I still have plans to stomp through with my steel toe boots on. You get what I'm saying? So that the next generation, my little nieces and my nephews, and if I ever have kids, they can get the benefit from it. So then they can look and say, well, wow, that generation set a new standard for us to follow. That's
You,
just the area that I see, but it's going to require a lot of discomfort on our behalf for somebody else to get the maximal comfort.
you know what? It's funny. Everybody talks about how successful the white man was, right, in accomplishing what he accomplished, right? When we talk about white man, we just mean white folks in general, right?
Like Europeans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
European folk. But what they don't realize is that there was a United States president who gave the game plan for how the whole thing was going to go. And it was the third president of the United States, John Adams. He said,
Really?
yes, he said, I learned politics and war so that my children can learn engineering, navigation, mathematics, science. They learn mathematics, science, and all the other things so that their children can practice the arts. I'm paraphrasing, right? But
Right.
what we fail to understand is that there is a process to this thing, right? That
Correct.
every generation needs to build on the efforts of the ones that came before. It's too many of us, right, who keep trying to reinvent the wheel. And the fact is that, for lack of a better way to say it, transformation or revolution is as old as human beings.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
It is as old as
Right.
time. There is nothing new under the sun, right? Like, we don't have to try to come up with new and ingenious ways to do something that human beings do because we're human beings, right? This is what MLK was talking about when he said that the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. Because if you look at generation after generation after generation after generation, right, all the way back to the first, human beings, there's always been a push for those who do wrong to be held accountable, and for those who seek accountability for those who do wrong to adhere to justice, right? Justice is our birthright. Simply because
Right.
people have perverted and made things unjust. Justice is our birthright. Righteousness, peace, love, prosperity, those are our birthrights. We
But if
have the right to pursue them to their fullest extent.
but if you think about it, even though we might consider something unjust, I look at it and say the people who are doing it against us, they don't look at it as unjust. They look at it as it works for them,
Yeah.
right? So when you say reinventing the wheel, I think part of the reason why for ADOS or Foundational Black America, I'll just say the lineage who comes out of slavery in America, the reason why we're always having to reinvent the wheel is because we've actually, for our group, haven't really seen a will that actually works, right? You might have seen like a structure of a will, but as soon as it gets rolling, it gets blown out.
Mm-hmm.
Or something happens that makes it where you can't look at that will and say that will design is the most effective for accomplishing this specific task. You get what I'm saying?
I do.
And
And
and in part that's
I'm
why
sorry,
I
go
think
ahead,
we
fam.
end up with the struggle that we have because we're all trying to throw out our own ideals of what a structurally sound will looks like
Mm-hmm.
because we've actually never seen that type of structurally sound will in our own community to say like, hey, that type of will works. So you have the intersectionalists, whether you agree with that ideology or not, that's just the will they believe will work. Then you have the people who are the segregationalists, and I'm not speaking of it in terms of
No, I
like
know it. I know
Southern
exactly what you mean.
segregationists. I'm talking about like
Mm-hmm.
get away from the white man type
Yep,
people. So they think
absolutely.
that stuff will work. So their justification for it is like, well, look at what we were doing before we encountered the white man, but they can completely negate the fact of what happened before the white man came in with the man out of the Middle East coming down and the things that happen
Mm-hmm.
on the continent of Africa with those people.
Yep.
So it's very easy to want to justify something, but also part of the reason why we're always sitting here reinventing the wheel is because we've actually, as a group, ethnic group in this country, we've never seen a successful will that works in our favor. We've only seen successful wills for everybody else. So I think in
So,
part we're trying to mimic what they're doing
because no,
and
I
trying to
get I get where
retrofit
you're
it for
coming
our
from on
cause.
that one. So then, with that in mind, right, with what you're saying, we're taking as face value, as truth, right? Then what's the solution? I know I have an idea, right? I have an idea, but I want to ask you, no, taking what you say as face value, as truth. What then is a solution as far as you're able to tell?
the thing that I've done, hold on a second. The thing that I've done about 3 years ago, just on a personal level, I started showing up from the political standpoint to meetings that would go on in my community.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't say how well that worked for everybody else, but there was a whole lot that I learned by participating in the political scope on the local side,
Yeah.
right? I learned a lot about how our local government is tied into the regional government, how the regional government is tied into the state, and the state into the federal, to the point where I've seen enough to say until we get involved actively by showing up to just the meetings to get an understanding of the politics in your environment, it's going to be very tough to think you're going to compete against these people on the national level. And I'll give you a simple example. One of the things that like municipalities have access to from the federal government is it's classified like community block development grants.
Yep.
Pretty much it's money that the government sets aside. Well, depending on how big of a municipality you stay in, certain municipalities can go directly to the federal government and say, "Give us our money."
Yep.
Well, if you're not that big, the government feds then defer it off to the state, and then the state ships it off to the county. But what you'll find is like smaller municipalities will try to lump with other groups of municipalities so that they can have more bargaining power with the percentage of funds that they get access to.
I agree.
Now, I wouldn't have known any of that had I not started showing up to these meetings and asking questions of the elected officials about, things that they had said, things that I had researched to find out, like the way the municipality I'm in, we're a small municipality, so they can't just go to the federal government like for say a city like Los Angeles can and tell them give us the money. The feds are going to tell them go talk to your county because we disperse the money for you to your state, and then your state disperses it to your county, and you guys can go fight with the county.
Yeah.
Until we have a better understanding of the local level, in my opinion, it sounds great with wanting to go after the big DNC folks or RNC folks,
Mm-hmm.
but they're so well protected that anything you do isn't really going to matter. It might be like a mosquito to them because they're locked in there. I mean, once you see the type of money that flows through your local government, you'll then have a better idea of what type of money is flowing through the federal government.
Now,
Even in my
brother Miles, hold on a
it's
second.
got a lot of money that flows through there.
Hold on a second, because I was actually more referring to, and by the way, I think what you just said is 100% spot on. So I don't want you to think that what I'm about to say next negates that, right? I absolutely 100% agree with you.
You're good.
But what I was more referring to was, what is the solution for us collectively with this particular issue? Because what the particular issue is we were discussing the reinvention of the wheel and trying to put all of these multitudes of ideas out there and so on and so forth, right? And I told you that I had a solution, or at least what I think might be a potential solution to that problem as a collective. Right. So you're spot on with what you're saying.
When you say collective, though, like the collective I was referring to is more of the political stuff that has been spoken on. But if you could give me a better idea of what you mean collectively.
Yeah, what I mean collectively is all of us as a tribe in every area of people activity. Us as a collective, right?
Yeah, that one that's so great that in all honesty, only God can answer that question.
Okay.
Right? I'm not
gonna sit here and say I'm a God. Okay.
Yeah.
But I have what I believe
figure that one out.
Is an answer to that issue. What's
your answer though?
Here's the answer, or at least an answer to that issue. We show people. Now, before you go, what the hell is he talking about? Right?
Okay.
Let me run it down to you, fam. One of the things that I've always loved about my people is that we have this thing where we love to engage with others and try to get, people to, really see the story, to feel the story, right? And so on and so forth. Like when we get together, man, we're able to inspire each other like no other, right? And I love that about our people. It's a beautiful motherfucking thing. Here's the problem. there needs to be a combat of ideas. The only way that can happen, though, is where every other battle happens in the real world, right? You with me so far?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So rather than, Brother Miles, wasting our energies effectively proselytizing, because that's what a lot of our efforts are when we have these so-called debates and
Yeah.
discussions. We're not really like actually trying to get to the core matter so that we all are on the same page. No, what you have is two
Pontification.
groups of black people essentially
Yeah.
proselytizing for a view they already feel is correct.
Hold on, wouldn't Navy Fluor call that mutual admiration societies or something
Well,
like that?
it's similar to that, except that on one, okay, so on both sides, what you have are echo chambers, mutual admiration. Patting each other on the back. Yeah, brother, you wise,
Yeah.
brother. You own it,
Yeah.
brother. Yeah, you too, brother. And so on and so forth, right? But then you have opposing mutual admiration societies, right? And our issue was that we see this, and what it's tantamount to is that you have all these different competing ideas, right? So on and so forth. Okay. And we were trying to, you and I at least, we're trying to get to the heart of the matter, which is how do we overcome this constant attempts at reinventing things and so on and so forth, right? Well, my answer is that when you have these ideas, share them, but don't proselytize. Go out and actually demonstrate the validity of your idea. Because believe it or
Right.
not, fam,
Okay.
a lot of the time, we don't need every single member of our tribe to adhere to a particular idea in order to establish its soundness. Matter of fact, sometimes having large groups of folk adhering to a particular idea can be, in the short term at least, detrimental because then you have to spend a lot of time organizing and trying to get people to make sure that everybody's on the same page about what the idea actually is, and so on and
Right.
so forth, right? Sometimes, fam, it's better to have a core group of folk that understand the idea, cleave to it, and then execute, right? Too often we get caught up in what's called analysis paralysis. We're sitting here having these debates, talking back and forth, having our mutual admiration society and echo chamber over here, and then disrespecting this one over here. And we never actually get around to the one thing that's actually going to do something for us, which is actually doing something, right? We
Right.
never make it to the point of action, right? I would much rather see a group take action on something, right, and fail than to have a
Yeah.
thousand of us in various groups together talking up a blue streak and nothing ever fucking gets done.
Okay. I just want to add something in there that
Go
you
ahead,
said is
fam.
very interesting. In like venture capital, right? When you see tech firms and all that, if you ever heard of like Sequoia Capital, what they do is they like invest in teams. And one of the things that I learned from a conversation with people, not necessarily at that organization, but at another one, what they said to me was they have learned that you could give a bad team a good ideal and they won't get it completed.
Yep.
And you could give a great team a bad ideal and they'll get it completed. Now,
Even
you might
even if
think
it's a bad
that
idea.
you think you'd invest in the bad team that got the good ideal. But what the guy said is like, no, we invest in teams. We're not investing necessarily in ideals. But they know if we could find a good team to keep on feeding ideals to, as long as they show us they can complete it, then cool, we'll keep on investing in them.
Thank you.
And so part of what I started learning to do was there's something I tell people, like I don't think I'm smart. I just work really hard at what I do.
Right.
But I've come to learn this, right? I have stupid ideals that I don't like and stupid ideals that I like,
Mm-hmm.
right? I just believe I have stupid ideals. Now, if I like the stupid ideal, then it's my job to prove it out to be a smart ideal through the actions that I take. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Too many times people
absolutely.
think that they have a smart ideal because it just popped up in their head. But I'm a firm believer in be the most critical of your ideals so that when others come around to criticize it, you won't be as hurt about it. You might take what they're saying and say, well, how can I work with this to improve what I'm doing?
Facts. Absolute facts. Like, this is why I encourage feedback from people. This is why people who detract or come here and have, what you would consider bad comments or whatever, they never get blocked. I actually need their feedback. Right?
Correct.
One of the things I learned, fam, early on, and I'm certain you'll appreciate this, Brother Miles, is that you can count on your enemies to tell you the truth.
Oh, 100% of the way.
But most black people, you say that to most black people, they'll look at you like, what? What do you mean your
Right.
enemies will tell you? Enemies will lie to you. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Fam, nobody will lie to you more than somebody who loves you.
Correct.
That is absolute 100% facts. The people
That's
that
some of the
care
worst
for
people to take
you,
ideals to.
the people that care for you don't want to ever see you hurting. They don't ever want to see
Hmm.
you struggling. They don't ever want to see you feeling some kind of way. So they will tell your ass anything to protect you from struggling, from hurting. But sometimes,
Right.
fam, struggle is required. Sometimes you just gonna have to take one on the chin. You're gonna have to hear some feedback and go, ooh, damn, oh, that hurt. Well, okay. Now what? Right? And the people that love you, they will protect you from something that you really don't want to be protected from. You need people who are going to take your weak areas and highlight
Right.
them. You
Right.
need somebody that's is gonna be telling you clearly where you're bearing your belly, where you're
Hmm.
vulnerable, right? I love my people, right? But sometimes I wish that we were not so lovey to each other that we couldn't give and accept feedback. A lot of us feel some kind of way. We come up with this idea and we get attached to the idea and so on and so forth. So then when somebody says, "Well, damn, fam, what kind of idea is that? Like, which kind of shit
Right.
you on?" Rather than saying, "Wait a minute, he's got a good point. What am I on?"
Right.
Right, and
Let's investigate it.
analyzing this shit, we get to feeling some kind of way, and now
Right.
we're not. Now the idea itself doesn't even matter anymore. It's our defense of the idea,
Yeah.
right? And that
Right.
doesn't get us anywhere. If we need the cream to rise to the top, right? We need the best ideas out there. We need to be able to act on the best ideas. Then we have to learn the methods and means and techniques that allows us to be able to engage in proper discussion, critique, criticism without feeling some
Hmm.
sort of way about it. So I agree with you 100%, Brother Miles, that part of the issue is that everybody's married to their ideas or to the defense of their ideas rather than to what is the best ideas, right? I want to see more combat of ideas. As a black sheep, I don't give a damn about popularity. What I want to put my efforts behind is what will work. And the only way we can do that is by having a combat of ideas, by having a core group of brothers and sisters around every idea who are willing to enact it. And then we can sit there and analyze the success or the failure of that idea and act accordingly.
The key that you said, at least in my opinion, and from experience, is enacting it. A lot of what I'm not saying specifically for just what ADOS or Foundation of
Right. No,
Black
I get you,
Americans or
fam.
DOAS represent. I'm just talking about in general in life,
Hmm.
particularly among Black folks, is we like to talk about the ideal a whole lot and then walk off. Well, you said enact it. Enact it means like, okay, here's the ideal. I'm gonna go, build this program, and it's gonna be able to tell me where all the industrial parkways are in the country. So at any given point in time, anywhere I'm at, I can find an industrial parkway, possibly find a job. Maybe that's a good sign and ideal, but until you actually step out there and start taking the steps to round up all the stuff that you need. And along the way, you're going to find out, hey, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I just did not know, because that's what happens when you actually pursue an ideal
Right.
as opposed to talk about it. You get what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So when you're just talking about an ideal, it all sounds great because it's like, wow, that sounds really good. But when you really start going after it, you start running into those roadblocks. You start running into those challenges that are going to make you question yourself. You see, a lot of times when you're not actually doing it, you don't have to question yourself. You could just go and say it. But once you actually start doing stuff, you're going to start questioning yourself. You're going to see where you're mentally weak at. You're going
Brother
to
Miles,
see
think
like
about this,
your
fam.
vulnerabilities, and you're going to have to deal with them at that point, or else that's going to be the point that you get defeated at.
Think about this, fam. We have gotten so bad in this dynamic that we can get together and have a 3 hour conversation. And at the end of the 3 hour conversation, you know what we label that conversation?
Success.
A build. Oh, we was building, fam. What did you actually build? You had a conversation. And don't get me wrong, conversation is definitely important, right? You want to be
Right.
having discussions, and this whole channel is built around conversation and discussion. But at the end of the day, I'm hoping that we can take what we've discussed, what we've conversed about, and actually put that shit into practice for good or for ill, right? I don't care if we take an idea and we run with it and we fail. You learn even from failing. Right now, one huge didactic in Silicon Valley, for example, is this
Yeah.
concept of failure. Like, they
Yeah.
encourage
Yeah.
people to
You
take
do.
bread and go and fuck up,
Yeah.
just so they can learn where
Yep.
where the failure points are and fix them, right? Like,
Right.
it's crazy. You got people that get paid to hack people's computer networks.
Because they didn't check for vulnerabilities. A vulnerability is a failure, but even if you think you did it all the way right, you always know there's some vulnerability, but there's somebody else who comes along and shows you that. And one of the things that you'd be surprised to find out is that I'm not going to say all the companies, but quite a few of these tech companies out here that make physical products or services, when people attack their network or they find a vulnerability, it's usually kind of like a courtesy to contact them and let them know, like, here's a vulnerability in your guys' system. You guys
And guess what? They pay people to
a lot
do
of times
that.
they don't. Well, they do under certain, but quite a few of them actually will just look at that email and just pass it up because they're like, well, we're making money, so oh well.
Yep.
So what I'm getting at is like, sometimes it's other people who see your vulnerabilities that you can't see, and from what I've learned from seeing those things occur, we're gonna have to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, like, well, where are we doing that at in our own lives?
Yeah,
as
where
individuals?
where
Where
is
are we
our
brushing
pen
off our
testers?
vulnerabilities that somebody is showing us we have?
Exactly. Where
and we're
are our
brushing it off?
penetration testers? Where are the people amongst us who are willing to do us the favor? Because it is a favor. Trust me, you could have a shitty idea, and I know it's a shitty idea, and I don't have to tell you anything. I could just be like, oh boy, well,
Watch
good
them fall
luck
in
to
the face.
them. Right? So if I take the time to even critique your idea, understand that that's a gift. That's grace, right? Which is why you should encourage people to do it. So where are those people among us? Where are those people who say, okay, look, fuck this conversation and calling it building shit. How are we going to make this idea come to fruition? Who's willing to step up and put actual time, effort, resources behind giving birth to this idea? Good, bad, or indifferent, right? Pass or fail, doesn't matter. You feel me? Right? Once we start, see, that's part of that mental work that's needed for us to be able to progress forward anything that we choose to do as a tribe. These concepts that we're talking about today are related to politics, they're related to economics, they're related to education, they're related to religion and spirituality, they're related to sexuality. They cover and encompass every bit of human activity across the board.
But one of the things that I also look at, just in terms of like our ethnic group in this country, right? For a lot of us, we got to be honest that like the last time we actually had to work as a group to accomplish a group goal, and I'm not saying that means all of us, but that we had to really focus our energy and be willing to sacrifice in a way that you might not get the reward from, was really, again, the greatest generation. Because when you look out after that, it became a huge game amongst our ethnic group of how can I get mine and how can I shine, right?
Exactly.
So a lot of
Exactly. I mean,
the team building activities that are required for a cohesive group, in all honesty, I know I've never seen it. Like my grandfather, he was born in like the 1929, and I think he had businesses in the South, and he participated in the civil rights movement. But I also understand the context that you had, all outright segregation, right?
Yeah.
So there was that level of cohesiveness that just came
That
from the
had
fact
to
that you
be.
couldn't move
Yeah,
out right. So in a way, I'm not making an argument whether it was forced or not, but I'm just speaking on the aspect of there was no running to some other group or trying to identify through religion or sexuality or education.
yeah.
You was a nigga, you was a nigga.
That
Okay.
it was what it
So when was the
was.
last time we had to
Period.
work like this to be able to accomplish a goal? It's been a very long time. We've been diluted with, political ideologies, religious ideologies. I mean, you got to look around you to understand what team members you have and what you really got access to get something off.
Brother
So if
Miles,
you know that you don't have the team members to compete against Google, I wouldn't suggest you try to go do some stuff Google would do because you don't have the player personnel to do it. But
I
if you
agree
can
with you,
make something simpler,
brother.
then okay, cool.
I'm gonna have to let you go because I'm getting a lot of other calls coming in. But I just want
That's
to
what's up.
say that first of all, I agree with you 100%. We have to understand we can't keep trying to do this rugged individualist thing and think that we're going to see collective success. That's insanity, right? At some
Correct.
point, we're going to have to identify as a collective because Sister Sherry said it right. There's a reason why I don't tend to use the term community because we don't have common unity anymore. It's
No,
about
no,
who can
no.
shine,
Right,
fuck you, I got mine, and so
right,
on and so forth, right? Being the first black this or the only black that. Like,
right.
no, no, you can't have that and expect community. That's not how this thing works, right?
Nope.
Because no matter how many rugged individualists you have on, our so-called enemy side, there's always somebody who's willing to even take an L, right, to
Mm-hmm.
preserve whites' historic and current prerogatives and privileges, right? So
Yeah.
if we know that's the case, this us operating as this atomized, blown apart, identify with whatever you want to identify type of shit group, there's a lot of problems with that. So, Brother Miles, man, I appreciate you, man. I really do. Don't be a stranger, fam. You can call back in
I'm
anytime,
not.
man. I
And
appreciate you.
Mark, I always want you to understand this. You never have to agree with me 100% of the way, because not all the time do I agree with myself 100% of the
No,
way.
I actually
I
do. I
appreciate when
actually do
people
agree with
challenge
you.
the
So,
ideals that I put out there. I
yeah,
don't have a problem
absolutely,
with that.
fam. I appreciate you,
But you have a
man.
good night.
You too, sir.
And have a good
Thank you.
holiday.
Happy holidays to you as well. All right, here we go. I've got caller from 216. It's your man, Mark Black. What's your name? Where you calling from? And what's on your mind?
Mark Black, this the cool man in the house.
The
What's
cool
on? What's
man.
happening?
Hey, thank you so much for being patient. By the way, thank you to everybody who's been trying to call in for being patient. I'm gonna try. We're gonna get all of you. So keep trying, but I can only take one call at a time. Go ahead, the cool man fam. The floor is yours.
Sure. Well, first to start with, I want to know. I'm interested in getting a black sheep T-shirt or a hoodie or something like that. Have you thought about offering that as some of your merchandise?
I actually have. I do have a store set up, but to be honest, I don't like the way it's set up, and I want whatever I do for y'all, I want it to be quality, right? So I will be working on something like that for the new year, but I have not. It's there, but it's not the quality that I want to provide for you guys, and so I just don't even advertise it or whatever the case may be. I do have something, but it's not where I want it to be. So until I can get it to where I want it to be, I'm not going to offer y'all something that's janky.
Right. I got you. Okay. Hey, as soon as it's available, you definitely got one sale here.
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah. So I wanted to call in. I wanted because as we talk about the solstice, I'm reflecting on where we have been as ADOS this year, and I think we have accomplished quite a bit. And I look back to Jack. For me, ADOS started in January. I think that's when I saw the hashtag. At least that's when it became familiar to me. And then I saw Tariq come on board. I believe you may have come on board, or I got introduced to you around that time. and it was a very, very exciting time. And then, and so we went through the year. We had the reparations bill that was, being floated in Congress.
Yep.
So, so we like, okay, we're making progress really quick. And as we get to the end of the year, I came across a story that, to me, just showed how much progress we've actually made. And that story, you might know about it, is a city in Evanston, Illinois, where they have they voted to set up a reparations fund for the city residents.
I've seen that.
And
Yeah, there's about a $10 million fund from the proceeds from legal cannabis sales that they want to provide as reparations to Black citizens of Evanston, Illinois.
Right. I think I saw somebody do a rough estimate of what each citizen might be entitled to based on the population and the amount of the fund. It might be like 70-something thousand per person.
That's actually not the case, because the amount is limited by the rules that they're engaging. So basically, the City Council of Evanston has said that they're going to set aside this fund, but it's a percentage of the total tax receipts, and it's limited to $10 million total, the fund, right? So no, it's not going to be anywhere near like 70,000 per person or anything like that. The number is just too small. And I have my own set of issues with it too as well. But yeah, I get where you're coming from. There has been on a lot of people's mind the idea of restitution, because I'm trying to stay away from the word reparations, but restitution for our ancestors and us for the injustices that we face. We have made quite a bit of progress, in my opinion, in that area.
Yeah, and to me, I think just to have that, it's like that's something that you can show at just in less than a year that because of our efforts, you have this thing materializing. So that says to me, I disagree with the last caller in the sense that I see this happening within 5 years, maximum, if we push it right. I don't think you have to wait 10, 20 years. We have people that are suffering today.
Yep.
We can make the case that we need that aid today, now, urgent.
Agreed.
And when it comes to all of these different levels of government that we feel that we need to go through, no, I feel when you press a moral claim of the magnitude in which we are, and you can get those wheels, those things that need to happen. Those are just, little minor things. But the idea we deserving this, we're needing this, and we need it now. And we don't give a damn how you do it. You have to do it, and you have to do it now.
Yep.
See? And so when we approach it from that vantage point, I think we can get a lot of progress done, and I think we can get it done very quickly.
I would have to say, the cool man, that I'm of the mind that while I expect that things will take a while, right? That's my expectation, right? Because you want to have a balance between what you're aiming for and what you expect to have happen, right? But here's the thing to note. I do believe that with the right story, right, the right narrative, this thing can happen and happen very quickly. And so I think that it is key for us to understand that we need to be prepared for both eventualities, right? In other words, there are those of us who say this is a marathon, not a sprint. And so people are asking questions. Well, what do we do in the absence of reparations? I think those are valid ass questions. If you're saying that this is going to take, a generational project, it's not fair to keep people to maintain the same energy for 30 years. That's not going to happen, right? So we need to be talking about methodologies, procedures, systems, institutions being put in place to buttress us while we wait for the justice claim to come to fruition. But for those of us who believe that given the right narrative and striking while the iron is hot, we can make this thing move forward much quicker than a generational project, then we need to create the systems, institutions, and all of that allows these people, in the words of Oh Boy Peach, to fight like hell, to go in there and dig deep like ticks and bite their ass until they flinch, right? So yeah. I think both are going to be a part of the overall narrative that's being told, and thus we need responsibly to account for both narratives, right? And ultimately, what I'm saying is, fam, is that it doesn't matter which one we cleave to individually. Those of us who think it's going to be a marathon are going to think that, and they think that for valid reasons, right? And just like those of us who are willing to push and bring the pain until such time as they deliver on our demands, those people are in that headspace for valid reasons as well. I think that because of that, whatever we ultimately set up needs to account for both positions, because I think both positions will be extant in our community as long as our community is in this place we are, right? Somebody mentioned in the chat, fam, that we have actually, believe it or not, a very few of us that are demanding and speaking on restitution for our people, right? So I think that says to us that we are more powerful than we think we are, right? If we're such a small number and yet having the effects that we're already having, imagine as we continue to get wins and more people get on board, what effects we could have. But that also should humble us too as well. That should remind us that Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc., is not the real world. There are still plenty of brothers and sisters out there who are our tribes people that need to hear this information and need to have the opportunity to get on board with what we're doing. Would you agree?
Oh, I would agree 100%. And as far as what you said about the people of the different mindsets, I can see that actually working to our advantage in some ways, because the people who want things to happen quickly, hey, those can be the people that do a lot of the ticking early on, are really involved. And other people who see it as a longer term project can be that fallback to, if things don't go as quickly as we want, they'll be there to pick up the slack and keep us going, from an inspirational standpoint.
I agree. We need both. Trust me, you need your frontline fighters. I've used the analogy of the United States military to describe exactly how we're going to have to maneuver this space in order to get our justice claim met. There's only about a quarter of the total number of soldiers in the military that are actually frontline combatants. The rest are all support. Their transportation, their communications, their medical and first aid, their, engineers, and so on and so forth, right? We need both groups. We need the group of people that are willing to get out there and bump heads with the individuals that we need to bump heads with, right? But we also need that larger group of folk that are backing our play, that are ensuring that we have access to resources, that we can maneuver, that we can communicate, that we can do the things that we need to do in order to successfully press home this justice claim.
I agree. I wanted to also put out there my ideas of how I see the whole reparations or restitution movement for us. And I think that right now, the way it's currently in its current formation, it's very much attached to the Democratic Party. Reality of that is just reality. But I look at this as a moral movement. I look at it as the moral movement of our time. And as a moral movement, very much like the civil rights movement, it's not something that you should and really can attach to a political party. It transcends the party. It's something that it's a justice claim that we have on America.
Yeah.
Not a particular political party.
Exactly. It's not a progressive plan or a conservative plan. It's a debt that's due.
Exactly.
I don't give a damn if our inroad into pressing home this justice claim happens to be either a D or an R or a green or a socialist or whatever. None of that matters, and none of it should matter. You feel me? So right. Yeah, I'm right there with you, fam. That if we've learned nothing else in this advocacy over the last year, I would think that the idea of attaching this to a political party would be the diminishing of our justice claim. It would not enhance, right? It would actually be a diminishment of what it is
Correct.
that we're trying to do. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, yeah, and so I think that for those of us who are like minded, we need to push that in every venue that we can, so that that becomes, what this movement is about. Because
Now,
right now, I feel that it's being
b-
reduced.
before you continue, there was something else that I wanted to address, fam,
Sure.
because I agree with you that this is definitely a moral thing, right? A moral issue. That being said, I personally, so I want us to have a brief discussion about this, right? I personally have an issue with making it solely a moral issue. May I explain?
Sure.
Dr. Khalid Muhammad, among many of the other wise things he said, related to us that you can't argue morality with immoral people, right? Or to be more precise, amoral people. In other words, people who lack a moral sense, right? Now, I don't mean that white folks or Americans don't have morals, not at all. What I am saying, however, is that part of the American experience is denying the standing of morality to us as the bottom caste. In other words, of all the arguments for or against a thing when it relates to us, America itself has been educated to never consider the moral argument. It's never something that has been found historically or currently, as I'm able to tell, to be persuasive. Now, that being said, I don't believe that we throw out the moral argument completely. I think that we, as a part of our narrative in education and communication with each other, remind each other of the moral compass, the moral nature of our justice claim, right? But what I do argue because of that is that we limit that morality talk when it comes to engaging those who are not us. In other words, I don't believe that America will ever be swayed based off of a moral argument to do justice for us as the bottom cast. It just, there is no evidence that I can see anywhere that suggests that that will even be an argument they consider. Because think about this one, if you will, with me, fam. If morality was something that was for consideration, right? If it was an idea or concept as it relates to us, if that was actually on the table, would we still be having this argument today? In other words, if morality was something that the greater populace at large, our fellow white citizens and their acolytes, cleave to when it comes to any discussion of what benefits or hurts us, don't you think that something about our situation would have changed long before now?
Yes, if it wasn't for the interference that's being put in front of people. Interference meaning that you have the rhetoric of the conservatives. A lot of the moral things that they say about working hard and all that. You have a lot of propaganda that's being put in front of people as a smokescreen that stops them from making those moral considerations that they
Oh,
have.
no, I can agree with you on that. However, one thing about propaganda is this: propaganda is only as effective as the people who buy into it. And believe it or not, fam, with the structure of America, the way it's set up, America, technically speaking, does not even need to propagandize for this. We are not dealing with people that view us through a lens of morality. That has nothing to do with propaganda, right? They actually are incentivized to discount morality when it comes to us, right? Okay, I'll give you a case in point of what I'm talking about, cool, man. And I know you're going to feel me on this one. A brother is on his way home from a destination. He has an engagement with law enforcement who force him from his vehicle. Um, there's a physical attack upon his person, and ultimately he ends up shot and killed. Okay. When we then see the analysis of that situation afterward, Okay, right? I just laid out a basic scenario. I'm not talking about who was in the wrong, who was in the right, none of that. Okay, I'm just talking about the scenario. When we look at the analysis of that scenario afterwards, we look at it from a basis of them cops was wrong as fuck to do what they did to bruh. Look at how they treated him. That's an outrage. It's unjust. It's immoral, right? But when you look at the analysis of the greater populace at large, they make no determination whatsoever about the rightness or the wrongness of the killing of our brother. What they talk about is legalities. What they talk about is psychology, right? They talk about everything but the moral aspect of it. Because if they were addressing the moral aspect of it, we would have to look at whether or not we can even claim it's moral to give another human being the power of life and death over another human being in the absence of a clear trial, due process, and all. There's a whole host of arguments that would have to be up for discussion if morality came into it. But when you look at the analysis of the greater populace at large, they specifically avoid discussions of the morality of what happened to our brother. They simply start talking about legalities. They start talking about mechanics. They don't talk about morality. So what I'm saying to you, fam, is not that we discard morality. No, we understand that what is happening is wrong. Right? We can say that it's wrong. And when we're communicating amongst ourselves, we need to highlight these instances of wrong that is done to us. Where I have an issue is the assumption that simply because we see it as wrong and as a moral issue, that we can count on America looking at this from a moral standpoint of view. There's no evidence, fam, to suggest that they ever have or that they ever will. They're incentivized to not do so.
Well, I have to disagree with you, and on this basis. In order, there was a group that came out, a group of Jewish people who I think they're Reformed Jews, and this organization said they are for reparations for African Americans. I think there have been some communities, maybe in North Carolina, that wanted to initiate some discussion, it might have been North or South Carolina, about reparations as well, Reparations Commission. And so I would say to you that for anyone to really fully be on board for us for reparations, they have to, at some point, they have to see this as a moral imperative. You're not going to be moved to do anything to compensate somebody else, give somebody else something that you're not going to be getting, unless you see it as something, some moral situation that needs to be corrected.
That's not necessarily the case. You can be motivated by a multitude of things. Think about this one. You could actually frame an argument for restitution for Black people and make it a self-interest issue. In other words, you could argue that addressing restitution for our people will be to the benefit of the GDP, to the benefit of the atmosphere and the political condition of America, could be the benefit of. So in other words, fam, you don't necessarily even need to introduce the moral argument to be able to effectively. So I'm not. I can't agree with you there, Mark. I can't agree that you're going to get very much traction with people saying if you give Black people this money, it's going to be good for this, that. At some point, you have to say, no, what we're doing is something that is, these people are owed this. This is a debt that we have to pay. And when you talk about owing and debt, then it talks about you getting into right and wrong and morality. That's not true. That's not true. When you're talking about debt, debt is legality. Debt is technical. Debt doesn't care about, like, your debt collector doesn't come to you and say, you know what, you need to make sure you pay your light bill this month because it's the right thing to do. No, they come to you and say, you need to pay the light bill this month because you owe the light bill, right? There's no need, in other words, when you're referring to this as a debt, which it is, to even introduce the moral piece. That's good for us when we are dictating and controlling our narrative amongst ourselves, right? But in point of fact, I couldn't
disagree with you more, Mark. When somebody comes to you and say, I owe you a debt, it may not be said overtly, but implicitly there has to be some type of basis for them saying that. And they're saying the debt is a legal term. the law comes from values. Those values come from our morals. So at some point, there had to be a moral reckoning that a certain type of situation should be encased in law as it should be dealt with in a certain way. And so the debt, it had to be, well, how did you get the debt? You got that debt because you maybe borrowed something from somebody or used something that they had, and so you accumulated that so that we can come and we can see, and then you owe that person for, the services that you bought or used, what have you. So yeah, we can go back and we can find the moral basis for these claims that we're talking about.
I didn't say we couldn't. Again, I think you perhaps are thinking that I'm arguing at cross purposes. I agree that there is a moral aspect to the debt that's owed us, right? What I am telling you, however, is that moral aspect has more benefit. So you were talking about in the sense of value, right? That your values are driven by your morals. But that's not necessarily the case either. You can value things based off of a cost benefit analysis. You can value things based off of irrationalities, right? You can say the color purple is the best color in the world because, lilies have it, right? And you don't have to establish anything more than just simply that. My point is that we have not seen any real evidence that the introduction of the moral aspects of our justice claim to the discussion actually furthers our goals of getting us any closer to it, right? And in point of fact, I would argue that it actually is a hindrance, because I can guarantee you, say whatever you will about Republicans or about conservatives, right? But you start going and talking to Republicans and or conservatives about moral this and moral that when it comes to Black people, and they're going to look at you like you're speaking a different language. Now, if you start talking about cost benefit analysis, start talking about the addition of $1.5 trillion to the GDP immediately in the 5 years after the institution of a comprehensive restitution scheme, when you start talking about stuff that benefits their self-interest, you don't need to introduce. So my point is I'm not saying we can't introduce it into the argument. I just argue that it's not necessary. Why even come to them with that when we have a whole host of other argumentation and so on that doesn't require them to feel some kind of way about us, right? Like, because morals would imply that they would feel some kind of way toward what's happening with us, but we don't. Go ahead, fam. I'm not cutting you off. Go ahead, fam.
Yeah. So, all right, let me say this. When I first started, I said that I view this as a moral movement. And so when you talk about what animates, or when I see what animates, or how it should, we should pursue it and how we should think about it, that is what I meant. Now, that is not to say that the moral argument always has to be at the forefront. Okay. But I guess I would have to disagree. I would have to, and I would agree with you when you say, "Oh, we can make other arguments that are not moral, that can also be persuasive, and they can." Yeah,
we on the same sheet. No, we are on the same sheet of music, then, fam. Is again, the moral piece is imperative to us, right? To you and I. We need to understand clearly not just the facts and this, that, and the third. We need to understand the absolute wrongness of maintaining this current status quo without our justice claim being honored. I could not agree with you more, right? The only place where I see it break down the moral argument is when we then turn to other interested parties who are not us with moral arguments. I don't see where that will necessarily benefit us, right? But as long as you're talking about us, I couldn't agree more.
Okay, well, here's what I would say, and I agree with you there. But I think one thing that would be useful is to go to these Reformed Jews and ask them, why do you support reparations? And see why. I'm betting that you will find that they're going to say it's going to come down to a right and wrong. Like, we think that what happened, you blacks were wrong, and it's kind of something needs to be done. I think that's what it's going to boil down to. Yeah. So I think that I
couldn't agree with you more. As a matter of fact, I would argue that we don't even need to ask them. It probably is driven by a moral argument when you're talking about the Reformed Jews, right? It probably is being driven by a moral or spiritual or ethical basis, right? Let's not, though, expect the vast majority of America to be Reformed Jews. Like, it's okay if that's what's driving them to jump on board and advocate with us. I'm all for it. I just think it's unrealistic to expect that the rest of America will say, "Oh yeah, those moral arguments make perfect sense. We need to get this done because it's absolutely wrong." I'm just that's so we're
Okay.
saying the same thing,
But
fam. There are people that
we
this will
agree. But I'm
drive.
a lot more optimistic than you, and I even go so far as to say it may not necessarily be us that would make the moral argument that would get the attention of everybody. It may be people like the Reform Jews that could make those arguments that could get the
Oh,
attention.
I
of
agree
general
with you.
public.
As a matter of fact, I think it's interesting that if now, of course, they've indicated that they're willing to ally with us. I need to see more performative alliance from the Reformed
Mm-hmm.
Jews before I accept whatever they're saying, right? People could talk out of their ass, right? I want to see what the Reformed Jews as a collective are going to do. Now, that having been said, I think that it is entirely possible for us to have allies on the other side, so to speak, who are making those moral arguments that will be able to influence our fellow white citizens and others that are potentially able to be swayed by moral arguments, right? So you and I, again, right there, same sheet of music. I just want
Cool.
to ensure that we don't get caught up in the trap of assuming that because the moral argument is there, that has any more strength or any more power to sway any other American citizen or politician or whatever than other arguments that we can frame that are more technical in nature, right? Rather
Okay.
than
What I can agree with you on is that it doesn't necessarily have to be the front line argument. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. But if we might have to part ways, because I think that for this to happen on a mass scale, there has to be a moral reckoning. But anyway, the other thing I wanted to say was about reparations. And you talked about reparations a few weeks ago, and I wanted to just say at that time I couldn't really articulate what reparations meant for me, but I can tell you in a very quick way what I think reparations should mean, and I would like to suggest this for some other people.
have it at house. I've been waiting for you to call in because you wanted to call in and really kind of talk about it. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that that's still been on your mind, fam. What does reparations look like to you?
Well, I mean, it's very simple and it can get larger, but reparations to me is to repair everything that I have lost that can be possibly giving back to me. Let's give it back to me, plus interest.
Facts.
So what does that mean? That means that, okay, if my ancestors were taken off land in Africa, I want land in Africa. If my ancestors were taken off land in the United States, I want land in the United States. If we were prevented from being a part of certain industries, we want to identify those industries and we want to be included in those industries as soon as possible. So what I'm saying is that all we have to do is itemize what we have lost here. And also I'd add into that, the damages as far as the pain and the suffering and all that. You add that in, and I think that's how you come up with reparations should be. For us, so that when this whole package, when all of this is said and done, everything that we lost that we could gain, we have gotten it back.
Facts.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you, fam. I actually didn't say it any better. You're spot on. I want us to be made whole and restored back to where we would have been had we not had the injustice occur in the first place. Now, with pain and suffering, we can never get that back, right? So we just have to assign an arbitrary number to that. But you're right. All the rest of it is simply accounting. It's itemization and accounting. I couldn't agree with you more.
All right, glad. And lastly, I'll say this: some things that I think some things I think we need to aim for in 2020, because I think we're behind the curve already. These are things that we should have been talking about, but we need to flesh out what we want for reparations. We need to flesh out the planks of a Black agenda.
Yeah.
We need to flesh out the idea of plebiscite and setting up a mechanism so that we can vote on these things and so we can move as a collective. And the last thing I'll say is I think we need a code of conduct, which we talked about before. Yeah. How are we going to relate to one another as we pursue this justice?
Yes, sir.
From now and into the future. And so I think Neely Fuller's book is a point of departure where we can go in there, we can pull out some things, we
Yep.
can begin to get working on those issues. And with that said, I'm gonna let you go, Mark. And I probably won't talk to you for the rest of the year. You have a good end of the year, and I'll see you
I
on the
will,
next.
fam. And again, man, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your contribution to the broadcast, brother. I hope you and yours have a great holiday. Enjoy the long night. Reflect and take the time to rebirth and renew, fam.
Thanks, Mark. Much love, fam.
Much love, man. Peace. Caller from 301, it's your man Mark Black. What's your name, where you're calling from, and what's on your mind? Hello, caller from 301, it's your man Mark Black.
This is your elder brother Richard.
Hey, brother
in the
Richard.
DMV.
Thank you very much,
Yes,
brother
yes.
Richard. I'm glad to have you with us
Yes.
today. Go ahead and drop some gems on us. What's on your mind?
Oh man, I'm all over the conversation you having tonight. I'm all over the place, man. I'm all over the place. But so maybe you can frame it in a healthy way, because I really appreciate your insight, the way you're able to discern things, your critical ability and everything, the way you're able to frame things. I really appreciate that.
Fam, it's my honor, man. It all belongs to y'all anyway. I'm just carrying it for us.
Okay, so I might be going all over the place, but I like to start out with, because I might quote something by James Baldwin. I might quote something by W.B. Du Bois. I might quote something by Malcolm X. I might quote something by Dr. King tonight.
Hey,
but
go
what
ahead,
I'm really
fam. Do you?
But what I'm concerned about is in social psychology. I had a class years ago. Oh my God, it had to be over 30 years ago. Social psychology, the basis for us to really, one of the things I see as a basis for us to really make a move, for us to really get this movement going, is to develop a collective consciousness. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
A collective consciousness. How have people who have struggled and who have overcome and so forth, or who have established their own independence, or who have established their own identity and so forth, was a collective conscious developed to the point that they were able to, they had enough support, or they had enough people with a collective consciousness, whether it was a political collective consciousness, whether it was a social collective consciousness, or whether it was an economic social consciousness. So when we get into that, like I think we're going to have to. Right now, we are in my 71 years. I think we are. I have never seen a more. I have never seen a more awareness, a more debate on reparations or our justice claim in my 71 years, in my time that I've been conscious. It's a lot stirring out here. It's a lot of debate going on out here. And I realize, from what I hear and so forth, I think we have enough. I think we have the erudites, and we have enough people who will engage in that. It might come through writings, or it might come through music, or it might come through the arts, or whatever that collective consciousness, whatever this Renaissance movement is going to be. It's going to come from various forms, like when you was talking earlier about our story. Our story has been told in the blues. Our story has been told by Langston Hughes. Our story has been told by James Baldwin. W. Du Bois,
Mm-hmm.
and all of these people have told our story. You know, it's a number of ways our story is told. You know, it might be in music of John Coltrane, or it might be in, Langston Hughes. I've seen Rivers, and it might be in James Baldwin, The Fire Next Time.
Yeah.
It's just so many ways that our story is told. But I just believe at the grassroots level, we got to, whether it comes through the writings, because when I was in the military, I was in the military before y'all was in the military during the Vietnam era.
Yeah.
So I was in there 6 to 8, and so forth. But they had the Jet magazine. I don't know if you had the Jet magazine then.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Jet magazine.
They had these 3 Olympic stars that raised their fists. These 3 brothers got up on that platform and raised their fists, and that was seen globally. These brothers taking a stance and so forth. So they had a consciousness about them that they got up there in unison and so forth and made a statement.
Yep.
Colin Kaepernick made a statement, although he might have been a lone soldier out there, but the statement that he made went globally. So, but with people like you, Dr. Daddy, and so forth, and several other people, you got. I listened to some of the valedictorians down at Morehouse and so forth in the HBCU. We got the institutions and so forth, and doing it at the grassroots level. I think we can develop a social consciousness, a collective social consciousness that can begin to steer us up. It's like something that undergirds us and so forth. It's just like when B'nai B'rith come out and said that's anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
They come out when you do something that they think is against their cause or doesn't support them. They get in the media and so forth and say that's anti-Semitic. So we're gonna have to begin to say what that performance that Joe Biden did last week on the debate. That's anti-ADOS.
Facts.
And if ADOS people, NADOS people listen to my voice, NADOS people in the diaspora, NADOS people down in South Carolina, if they support Joe Biden, they got to be out of their cotton picking mind.
Facts.
Did you hear what he said? He did when they asked him about reparation. He went on. He was such a strong advocate of illegal immigration. I never heard anybody present a better case for illegal immigration than Joe Biden. Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, all of them people up there on that Democratic platform, they not advocating for ADOS, and we got to let it be known. We got to let it be known with a strong voice and with a collective voice that we don't support them. We don't support any. We're going to have to start. We need to start calling all these CNN, MSNBC, and say that these people that they got on there like Joy Reid and whomever they bring on there, that they do not speak for ADOS. They anti-ADOS. We're going to have to make a strong voice, but I can remember James Baldwin in the Fire Next Time, and then I remember a song that my grandmother used to sing years ago when I was young, and it was in the church, and I ain't gonna try to hold you too long. She used to sing this song, it'll be a fire one day that the fireman can't put out.
Facts.
I just hope that one day that we have that fire in us that, don't care what they try to do, it would be so collective, it would be so strong that nobody, when they said something against ADOS, we'll have a strong voice. But I ain't gonna hold you long, brother. There's just so many thoughts. But
no, I hear you, fam. I mean, damn, you came in and just dropped a few jewels right there. I appreciate it. Brother Elder, before you go, I just want to say that I consider it every day my sacred honor, my responsibility, my duty to my people to point right at these so-called powerful ones and tell them exactly where they can stick it. The disrespect continually shown to our people, I will not abide. And if no one else, if I have to be a lone voice out there in the wilderness, standing up like in the sense of like what you said, like B'nai B'rith, right? And calling these anti-black bastards out, I will. And you can trust and assure yourself of that. There will always be at least one voice, mine, because I can't abide it. Joe Biden, Buttigieg, all the rest of them, fuck them. There's not a one of them. There is not a one of them that's worth us wasting the time to go to the polls, to poke a hole and create a Chad for their ass. Not a one.
Right. Yeah. I'm gonna go and I was at the service station tonight to get some gas, and so forth. But somehow, the line, it was several people in line, and then they was talking politics. They was talking about the impeachment of Trump and so forth. But this one elder gentleman, he came in and he was talking about Joe Biden and so forth, that he was supporting Joe Biden and stuff. So I had to shut him down because he was trying to make, he was trying to make a point and so forth. But I'm gonna get ready to go. But I like to leave you with these most profound statements by Dr. King and Brother Malcolm. Dr. King, one of the most profound things that he said was that we have nothing to be ashamed of. And the other profound statement that he made, he said, don't let anybody take your manhood. That was two of the profound statements by Dr. King. And concerning Malcolm X, they were interviewing Malcolm X, as I recall, and they asked him, what do you need to wake your people up to the oppression and the indignities and everything? And Brother Malcolm, in his wisdom and his insight and his most profound words, he said, no, wake the people up to their humanity. We're going to have to wake our people up to their humanity.
That's right.
Not to, we know we're oppressed. We know all of that, but we got to be woke. We got to be awakened to our humanity. I'm gonna go, my brother.
I appreciate
you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, brother.
Keep up the good work, my brother. And I'm gonna find a way to try and get you some. I got to find a way to try and donate to your cause, because
brother,
I want
you
your
just
voice
did.
to stay.
I appreciate you just calling in.
I want your voice to stay out there, my brother.
Thank you. I appreciate that, fam. I really do. And I appreciate you.
Because you have a very critical insight. You're very critical, and you've awakened me to a lot of things. But keep up the good work, my brother.
I will, brother. Peace. Thank you. Peace to you, sir. Brother Elder Richard in the house, fam. What a call. Here's the thing, fam. It's nights like this that they want to have us distracted from, right? They don't want us to sit here on the long night, right? The night where we behold the dying of the light and reflect. They don't want us doing this. They don't want us gathering together in ones and twos and fews, actually looking at our circumstances, actually looking for the solutions. So the fact that we're here right now doing this today lets you know this fight is just getting started, fam. And we ain't nowhere near done. Nowhere near. We have some internal work that we need to do. We have ideas that we need to buttress in here in our brain computers, so that when we do act, when we do maneuver, we're doing it from a basis of real, true, solid understanding of the reality and the story. We need them both, fam. We need the facts. We need the data. But we never, ever, ever should cede the narrative. Never underestimate the power of a goddamn good story, fam. Never. Never. So with that, fam, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I want to thank all my callers. I want to thank everybody in the chat. I want to thank D. Will for the donation. I appreciate you, fam. I want to thank you. Y'all inspire me. I ain't gonna say I would never, but I hadn't thought to do this broadcast because I didn't think it was something that was worth discussing, in the sense that I didn't know how it was gonna vibe. You know what I'm saying? How we were gonna vibe. But I should always trust in my fellow angry black sheep, because I know we're gonna get it done, right? So shout out to y'all. Shout out to the ones that are willing to be in the black sheep. Before I go, D. Will said, what do I mean by technical arguments? I simply just mean arguments that don't refer to any type of ethical or moral base, D. Will. I'm talking about cost-benefit analysis. I'm talking about economic arguments. I'm talking about things like that. Sure, will there be elements of opinion involved in those arguments? Yes, of course. But what I mean by technical arguments is just ones that simply refrain from making ethical or moral statements as a part of an argument for our justice claim. That's all I meant by that. And I hope that makes sense. So, fam, thank you as always. May the blessings of all the gods, known and unknown, seen or unseen, be ours. May this long night bring you to a place of rebirth, of renewal, of expectation that life returns, right? And most importantly, as always, fam, I want to leave you all with the wish of love, peace, prosperity, and power, real power to our people.